without ado, I think we probably can start it and by asking Dr. Jun Wang to have a quick self-intro about your journey, capturing some of your key milestones in your professional life. Dr. Jun Wang,
Sure.
please.
Thanks, Dr. He. That was a lot of memories. I didn't even know you have all these pictures of me. That's quite a surprise as well. Very happy to be here and very happy to meet you, everyone on the line virtually. As Dr. He already mentioned, I came to the US in 2009 as a PhD student in UCLA. So I was studying electrical engineering with a focus on wireless communication, and during which I was also working on a lot of student activities. For example, for the CSSA work I did in 2010 to 2011. I also, as Dr. He mentioned already, I was one of the early contributors to LEAP, which I was very happy and honored to kind of join the group of very passionate people to kind of form a lasting organization, which is still active until now. And then after graduation, actually in 2014, I joined this company called Broadcom, which is a semiconductor company located in California as well. It was in Irvine. And then I worked as an R&D scientist or engineer at Broadcom. We designed wireless connectivity solutions, which is basically Wi-Fi and Bluetooth chip for high-end smartphone and IoT, which is Internet of Things solutions. Our customer back then was mainly Apple, Samsung for high-end smartphone, and we also have a couple of customers for our chips for the IoT market. And after working there for about 4 years, slightly less than 4 years, I switched gear to join BCG, which is Boston Consulting Group, in their Beijing office as a management consultant. Basically, I went back from Irvine to China in 2018, and then I've been with BCG for slightly less than 5 years now. And then my focus is still somewhat related to technology. I think my focus for the past 2 years are, in general, the new energy vehicle strategy and operation, and automotive technology, semiconductors, and also corporate governance and optimization of organizations and processes. I'm also on the side doing an MBA in Tsinghua University, which I started in 2019. This is still an ongoing effort. I'm about to finish hopefully this year. So that's a brief, I would say, history of my career. And then again, I'm here to share my experience and answer your questions. And I understand everyone has different type of question in different stage of career. And I think it was the same for me before a PhD graduation, before I left Broadcom. Even now, I still have questions and concerns and also challenges. So I think this is why Wear a Leap is a very good platform. You get to meet different people at different stage of their career and also at different kind of professions. And then a lot of those exchange of ideas, passions, even exchange of challenges or concerns, I think that could help a lot in each stage of your life and your career. So happy to be here, and then hopefully we have a very good discussion here. And then I think back to you, host.
We first started, we can kind of like you already mentioned about your highlights of your career. So maybe kind of like you can start it by giving, nowadays people try to give some labels and to different right? So if I ask you to use like 3 words to describe yourself, what would be these 3 words you think best describe yourself?
That's an interesting question. I would say the first word is diversity. I think this mostly focused on my career choices. I think diversity in terms of I've been living for quite some time, I think, in China and US. So for China, I spent my first 25 years there, and then I lived in the US for almost 10 years before I returned to China. So I think this is where, and also I was partially living in Hong Kong for 2 years for my master's. So I think in terms of diversity, first I mentioned is where I've been living. The second part is, as you can see here, I have three pieces of my career, which is basically academic research, and then engineering job, and also consulting. So I think that's another level or dimension of diversity. So that's the first word. Second one is, I would say, curiosity. I think this is something we'll discuss later, but most of my career choice was driven by curiosity. So I was always, I would say, curious about something I don't know. And then this is also driven a lot of my career decisions for the past, I would say, 10, 15 years. The third word, I would say, uncertainty, because I think every stage of my career, even today, I think I am facing a lot of uncertainties in terms of what to do next, in terms of where to go next, in terms of what are my options looking forward. So I think uncertainty is something that I dealt with. I think everybody is the same, like deal with in their career. So I would say diversity, curiosity, and uncertainty. That would be the three words I will use.
Okay, great. So it looks like you're not really following any like very well defined the pathway in for everything. But a lot of time for us, we kind of like feel comfortable with what we are, and we tend to be a little bit lazy or hesitate in terms of going to a new direction or get into a new situation, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think how do you think you handle that to help yourself? Will be some of your personal experience or advice regarding that?
Mm. Um, I think to handle, I guess, let me rephrase the question then. The question would be, how do you handle this kind of career switch, which are seemingly unrelated? Is that the question, or?
Yeah, that's one aspect, right? You can start with
Okay.
it, and yeah.
Okay. I think a couple of things that could help. I think one is be open-minded, be prepared for challenges. I think sometimes I agree with you. I think if you stay in one role or position for a couple of years, I would say 2 to 3 years, this is where people get a bit more comfortable. Either you're doing a PhD, you're doing an engineering job, or even you're doing consulting. So you get to know what you should do after, I would say, 2, 3 years. But then I think it's always, for me, that the curiosity, as I mentioned earlier, there's something I don't know about this world that drives me to think about, okay, what else can I learn? What can I achieve if I step outside of this comfort zone? So I think the number one thing I would say is to be prepared to be challenged. And I would say, I mean, it's perfectly fine to stay in comfort zone to deepen your knowledge in one specific aspect or area, which I could do, for example, to be a faculty after a PhD. But I mean, that'd be pretty hard. But that's one career path. The other path is I could stay as an engineer and then deepen my semiconductor with chip design expertise. But I think for me, there's always this curiosity of what else can I see or learn that's driven me to go outside the comfort zone and do something new. So I think this mental preparation of, if you switch, there will be challenge. That's the number one thing that will get you a bit more comfortable when you face a challenge, because this is something you've been prepared for. This is something you've been, this is your choice to be switching to a different career. I think the second thing that would help a bit is, I think, to prepare yourself not only mentally but also in terms of other techniques for the new job. For example, when I switched from a PhD student to Broadcom, I did an intern in Broadcom first. So I get to know what engineering job looks like and what is the different, comparing like doing the real product design versus doing research job. And then before I switched to consulting, I also spent some time doing case practices, talking to my friends in McKinsey, BCG, all these consulting firms. I also have quite intensive, I would say, case interview preparation. So this is also I think on top of this mental preparation, I think some detailed technique you can get yourself prepared. I think the third thing is basically you have to live with this kind of pressure. Well, there's some, pressure you will have to face at least for the initial 6 months to a year, and some level of pressure taking is also required. I would say, if you would like to switch your career in a relatively far away field in the middle of your, uh, career path. I hope I answered the question, Dr. Ho.
Yeah, that's actually very good answers. So following up question would be, how do you decide it's right time or it's right and opportunity for you to switch different career?
I think, honestly speaking, there's no right or wrong. I think before I access school, I think even before the graduation of the PhD, I think almost everything was like a one path road. It's almost like you get your undergrad, you get your master, you get your PhD, you get a job. Like everything along that path is very, I would say, straightforward in terms of how you make selections. But then afterwards, I think even doing grad school, doing master or PhD is already like a selection in your career path. I would say for undergrad, everything before undergrad is more or less straightforward. You have to go to good middle school, good college, you graduate, and then you have to select between grad school, having a job, and then after grad school, there's academic job, there's industry job, there's other stuff. I think there's never a good, I would say, timing to make selection. And then a lot of times, your own will won't be the only driving force for your selection. For example, when I was trying to find a consulting job while I was still working in Broadcom, I think I spent almost 2 years for the switch. Initially, I tried to apply for consulting job in the North America. And then I think for the entire year I was preparing, I was interviewing, but then things didn't turn out well. So then for the next year I applied for Greater China offices of major consulting firms, and this is how I get the offer from BCG. So I think I would say, one, be prepared, and then always keep, I would say, thinking. I think that's important. Some regular, I would say, thinking about your current career status. For example, are you happy with the current job? Are you achieving what you want to be? Is there anything else you want to, look for or prepare for? I think this regular kind of summary or like conversation with yourself, that's always important. If you don't have the time, then I think I would say put some time aside. I think every week or every 2 weeks, find an hour, like get away from all the regular stuff and just have a conversation with yourself. That's important. And the other thing is keep conversation with others. That's also important, because a lot of times I think opportunities appear, or even ideas of a career change appears during this conversation with others. This could be, join a LEAP event. That's very important. The eSalon could be helping, and also chat with your regular friends. I think spend some time with your friends. Well, maybe they're in North California, they're in China, they're in the East Coast. Spend some time, talk with them. That's also important, because sometimes idea kind of come once you have someone that is doing something else, and this will give you some idea as well. So I would say internal and external. I think prepare to change. That's, I think, the important thing here.
Hi, Dr. Wang. Actually, can I ask a follow-up question? It's Jolie
Sure.
here.
Sure, go ahead.
Since you were touching on your experience applying to consulting jobs,
Yeah.
you kind of took a unique path where most people, including myself, come out of consulting to go into the industry. But you kind of worked in the industry first and then went into consulting. Like, what kind of drove you to make that decision? And the reason why I'm asking here is I'm also considering, like, should I go back to consulting? I really liked that type of work. It's exciting, project. But at the same time, industry is also, secure, like it's constant, it's stable. Like, what are your thoughts, and what was your thinking process?
Okay, let me start with why I switched to consulting. I think that's a question I think Dr. Ho will also ask me later.
Okay, sorry, jumping ahead.
No, it's okay.
No worries, Jolly. Yeah.
It's a discussion anyway, so it doesn't matter. I mean, whenever you guys have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and then ask. My choice was actually, I mean, if you can see from this slide, I made two choices. Well, two major ones in my career. One is to go from PhD to engineer, and then from engineer to consulting. As I mentioned earlier, the second keyword I actually use is curiosity to describe myself or label myself. The reason why I switched from a researcher to engineering job is basically after 5 years of doing research, even if you count my master's in Hong Kong, that's like 7 years doing research. That was always wondering how are these theories or algorithms get into a real product. So this is why I think research and engineering, these are two different type of work for me, which I had this kind of hypothesis before I joined Broadcom, which get basically confirmed after my 4 years of working there. So I was always curious at the end of my PhD, how do all these math and algorithms turn into a real product? And that's why after the PhD career, I choose to join Broadcom as an engineer. I want to see how this real product or engineering job looks like. And this is the trigger for the first, I would say, selection here. The second one is, I think it was also out of some very key events in semiconductor. While I was at Broadcom, the classic Broadcom, we would say, was acquired by a different company called Avago. I think this is, you can check the news. It was one of the biggest semiconductor M&A back then. So after the merger, although the company is still called Broadcom, but then it's actually Avago acquiring the classic Broadcom. So the Broadcom today is called Broadcom Inc. And I was there in Broadcom during the entire M&A process, including the news announce, internal adjustments, and then the new company goes online on day one. So I saw a lot of, I would say, work change and strategy decisions during that transition period. For example, BUs were separated, people were reworked, and some product or even people are sold to other companies. Typical M&A, I would say, rework kind of a process after this merger. But then back then I was still an R&D engineer. So the question I had was, how do company make decisions in terms of how the business run? So I saw a lot of things which from an R&D perspective doesn't make 100% sense. For example, some product, I thought that's promising, but then it was eventually sold or even stopped from the management perspective. And some decision I would never understand from a, I would say, engineering background or engineering position in the company. So then I thought, okay, I would like to know how a company make decisions or how a company makes strategy decisions. That was a curiosity driven me to go from an R&D, I would say, role into consulting. I thought, okay, option one, I do an MBA. A full-time MBA. Option two is I do this consulting where I get to work on projects, which are basically how management make decisions, or at least advise or recommend decision to management. So this triggers the second switch, though, from Broadcom to consulting. I think go back to your question. I think you're 100% right. So if you work in consulting or if you have some experience here, it's a typical, I would say, exit option for consultants to go to corporations, which are for sure stable and then, relatively speaking, less intense. But it all depends on, I mean, corporate job and consulting job, I think they have different natures, right? Corporate job, as you mentioned, is more stable. You get to work with similar group of people on, I would say, similar topics most of the time. But for consulting, you get to work with a different client, different topic, different projects. So I think it's the diversity and the I would say the faster pace that makes a consulting job a little bit more fascinating compared with a corporate job, at least for me. So I would say, back to your question, Jolie, I think it's all about what you feel like. What do you feel like is a better lifestyle for you? Do you want to, work in a company and get to know people better, and then work on some long-term projects which are contributing to the company itself, or you still and you enjoy this kind of familiarity of the environment, and the sense of, I would say, stability and safety, or you enjoy this diversity and changing of topic and job and the learning experience. I think there's no right or wrong here. I think consulting versus corporate, it's all about getting to know, I would say, the pros and cons of your options, and then trying to weigh them against your own, I would say, preference or nature. I hope that's an okay answer for your question.